Greetings, my dear students, and welcome to this first lesson of our A classroom. I am Mr. Nalionge Maximilianus Ewoko, a philosophy teacher. I will be drilling you on advanced level philosophy, specifically textual analysis and philosophical problems. We will first of all have the overview of the subject, learning outcomes, previous knowledge, and the lesson itself. As of what concerns the overview of advanced level philosophy, we have logic, 23 units, Western philosophy, 25 units, methodology and textual analysis, 20 units, African philosophy, 19 units, systematic philosophy, 15 units, making a total of 6 areas and 103 units. As of what concerns this section, we have humankind and nature, humankind and the self, humankind and the society, humankind and religion, philosophical methodology, and the meditations on first philosophy. Our focus will be on philosophical methodology in essay writing. This will comprise of lesson overview, lesson outcome, prerequisite, that is previous knowledge, then the fundamental principles of philosophical methodology, principles of paragraphing, and structure of a philosophical dissertation before we conclude. This lesson is aimed at creating awareness about the changes in the philosophical methodology. It is equally there to permit the learner, the student, to better have or master the techniques in philosophy. It is equally to facilitate the understanding of the fundamental principles in philosophical dissertation. And lastly, it enables the proper drafting of a philosophical paragraph in essay writing. At the end of this our lesson, the student that you are should be able to develop the necessary skills in critically writing an essay. You should equally be able to develop the philosophical spirit in dialectics. You should equally have the ability to methodically answer questions, paper 2 and paper 3. And lastly, you should be able to understand and develop the parts of an essay, that is, an introduction, body, and a conclusion. Prior to this, you must have gone through the basic knowledge of philosophy, that is the definition, the nature of philosophy, the branches of philosophy, the origin and meaning of philosophy, and the importance of philosophy. Equally, the factors that led to the rise and development of Western philosophy, the periodization in Western philosophy, the nature of African philosophy, and the general knowledge on philosophical problems. What is methodology, philosophical methodology, all about? For a conceptual elucidation, we have methods, which comes from the Latin word methodos, and from the Greek word methodos, which refers to way, path, direction, or manner. It is a manner or way of doing something. It is a prescribed procedure for completing a task. When Descartes affirmed that good sense is the most evenly shared thing in the world, he implies that every human being is naturally endowed with reason. But he proceeds by saying it is not enough to have a good mind, but what matters is to apply it well. Thus, are we talking of a philosophical methodology or a philosophical methods? What is philosophical method? It is a procedure used while philosophizing to arrive at certainty. There is a multitude of methods in philosophy. We talk of the Socratic irony and myotics, Plato's dialectics, Descartes' methodic doubts, Kant's criticism, Marx's dialectical materialism, and so on and so forth. This diversity respects the definite philosophical method called critical reflection. On the other hand, philosophical methodology refers to a technique that a philosophical essay must follow so as to ensure its philosophical nature, culture, and spirit. It is the manner in which an essay in philosophy is being presented or drafted. Thus, philosophical methodology in dissertation refers to specific way of presenting an essay in paper 2 or paper 3. There are both, we should take note, an analytical method and a dialectic method. So at this juncture, our emphasis will be on the dialectical method and not the analytical method. We should equally take note that a philosophical essay is triadic in nature, meaning it is made up of 3 parts, like introduction, body, and conclusion, wherein the body itself is triadic in nature, that is 3 parts, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. These parts equally respect some specific and fundamental rules. So, what are the fundamental principles in philosophical essay? The first is problematization. Problematization at this juncture refers to the crisis of the mind related to the universe. Every situation in life has a particular problem we are looking for solution. So according to late Professor Mangabihina, the Cameroonian philosopher, the crisis of the mind is what makes the world to move. So problematization is made up of problem and problematic. What is a problem? A problem is the issue at stake, which always ends with a full stop, that is a period. While the problematic is the questioning of the problem, which equally ends, or which ends with a question mark instead of a full stop. And that ends the introduction. After the problematic, nothing follows. The second principle is argumentation. We base our reasoning on evidences or facts, be it one or more. In other words, a philosophical essay is a demonstrative expose or presentation. This argumentation, which is dialectic, must be rigorous and around a problematic. The third principle is the philosophical culture. One can never philosophize ex nihilo, meaning from nothing. Thus, to subjectively think, we must be able to know about what those who came before us said. That is the ideas of others. You have to master the branches of philosophy through definition, object of study, the ultimate goal, the schools of thought, and the proponent, those for or against a particular theory or a particular school of thoughts. The last and not the least fundamental principle in dissertation is aesthetical presentation. A philosophical dissertation requires an aesthetical presentation, meaning the beauty of your work, the presentation of your work, how you present your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. It's just like a plate of food which directs your thoughts and your appetite. So once you present an essay better, then you make it aesthetical and wonderful for someone to read or to go through. Reason why we must have an aesthetical presentation in essay writing. There are equally 5 main steps of a paragraph, meaning each point in the body is made up of a paragraph. And the 5 principles or steps are: 1, we introduce the point, or what we call a statement of the points, by saying firstly, secondly, thirdly, primo, segundo, tertio, and all the like. The second step is an explanation of the point stated. Once you state a point, you introduce a point, you state, then you explain. That's the second principle. After the explanation of a point, you now justify the third principle. You justify or demonstrate the point stated and explained previously. The fourth step is illustrating or referencing of the demonstrated point. What is the backup, the background, or the support, the pillar of the point stated and explained and even demonstrated? So you need to have referencing. For you to reference or have an illustration, you can use an illustrative or local example. You can use a philosophical relevant material or a related quotation. You can paraphrase a philosopher. The last principle or step in a philosophical paragraph is the conclusion of the point or paragraph. Each point you raise has an introduction and a conclusion. So conclude your point. Having said that, my dear students, we now get into the structure of a philosophical essay. The first is an introduction. According to Professor Mangabina, it is like a radiophonic program wherein you introduce the program for people to know what you are talking about. So the introduction of an essay is the foundation of that dissertation, which requires three components: the background idea, the definition of key terms, and the problematization. What is the background idea all about? The background idea is the backbone of your essay, that which leads you into your subject matter. It is neither remote nor close to the topic or the subject in question. After giving your background idea, you now move to the definition or explanation of key terms or expressions. Defining a key term or expression is giving a philosophical relevance, without which the question has no ground. We can define a school of thought or a concept. When it is a school of thought, we define and name the proponents. An example of such question: any question of the sophist, for instance. If we have a question on the sophist, how can we have, what type of definition can we give? The sophists were the second generation of ancient Greek philosophers who were nomadic teachers of rhetoric. Two of these prominent teachers include Protagoras of Abdera and Gorgias of Leontini. That is an example when we have a school of thought. What about a concept? Let's take an example of the concept of abortion. Any question on abortion, we can define as such. Abortion is the cessation of fetal development or the termination of pregnancy before its normal 36 weeks. There are fundamentally two types of abortion: spontaneous abortion and inducive or induced abortion. The third thing under the introduction is problematization, as we earlier defined. That is made up of problem and problematic. We should take note that the nature of the problematic should reflect the manner in which the original question is being posed. If the question is affirmative, then the problematic equally should be affirmative. If the question is negative, then the problematic should be negative. And if the question is assertive, then the problematic should respect the assertion. For example, let us take a case of an affirmative question. Can the existence of God be proven? That is an affirmative question. The problematic to this will be, are there adequate proofs to really demonstrate the claim that the supreme being is real? So we see the existence making the problematic to be affirmative, that is real. So is real is making the question to be affirmative alongside with existence. The next example is on a negative question. We take a very question, but negatively now. Can the non-existence of God be proven, at this juncture, the problematic equally should be negative. That is, are there adequate proofs to actually demonstrate the claim that the supreme being is a known reality? Our third example is in a case when we have a positive, an assertive problematic. And we take this example. God does not exist. Discuss. The question is straightforward and affirmative and assertive. God does not exist. So our problematic should equally follow this pattern. An example is there or is it really possible to actually have a knowledge of a supreme being being a myth? Or we put it this way, is it really possible to acknowledge a point of view that the supreme being is a myth? So those are the three principles of problematization. Let us take a sample of an introduction just to put together the principles. The question, can the existence of God be proven by man? A sample of introduction goes thus. Being is the totality of its existence, both material and immaterial, is the subject of study in philosophy, wherein, alongside religion, the existence of God remains unquestionable to man. Man, according to Aristotle, is a political animal, and according to René Descartes, is a rational being. And the traditional moralist, according to them, is a being with a body and a soul. God, on its part, is a supreme being considered by Aristotle to be the unmoved mover, by Thomas Aquinas to be the uncaused cause, while for St. Anselm, he is the being greater than which nothing greater can be conceived. Existence could be defined as the state of being or empirical reality. Several attributes characterizes this supreme being due to his greatness and perfection. The mixed happenings in the universe has raised many controversies, creating doubt about the reality of this supreme being. Thus, is it really possible to demonstrate the presence of a supreme being by a mortal being? That is a sample of an introduction in essay writing. Take note, this must be in one paragraph, in a block. We move to the second part of our essay, body of the essay. The body of an essay is the core of the matter. Candidates raise, analyze, discuss, and critically defend the issues raised in the question and the problematic. Discussion here, take note, is dialectical and has three parts: the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. The first, the thesis, is the first part of the body, which is a yes to the question. Here, the position supported by the examiner or a neutral position developed by the candidate is being presented. Take note, it should be only in one paragraph, respecting the 5 steps of a philosophical paragraph earlier raised. And a thesis could either be assertive or an open question. In an assertive question, the thesis supports the position of the examiner. For example, God is the architect of evil in the universe. Justify this assertion. That is an assertive question. In an open question, the thesis supports the position of the candidate's problematic. For example, is God the architect of evil in the universe? Let's take a sample of problematic from these questions. The first, is God the architect of evil in the universe? Our problematic would be, can it truly be said that the supreme being is the originator of the pains prevailing in the universe? Once we have such problematic, then the first part of our body, that is the thesis, will be an argument to demonstrate the responsibility of God for the pains and sufferings in the universe. A second example, still on the same question, now having another thesis, is that can it truly be said that the Supreme Being is not the originator of the pains prevailing in the universe? If we have such problematic, then our thesis will be on an argument to demonstrate the non-responsibility of God for the pains and sufferings in the universe. The second part of our body is on the antithesis, which is the opposite or the counteracting part of the thesis. The prefix anti means against, opposite, or contradiction. It is the no part of the question. The position here is that against the examiner, or a neutral position developed by the candidate. Equally take note, it should be in one paragraph, respecting the 5 steps of philosophical paragraph earlier raised. The antithesis could be a direction or a direct opposite, a criticism or analogy, depending on the nature of the main question. If we have a direct opposition, or in case of a direct opposition, one affirms softly what the other negates. For example, in the question, is God the cause of evil? The thesis is God is the cause of evil. Therefore, the antithesis will be God is not really the cause of evil. The word that really makes it lighter, not categorical. In the case of a criticism, we have to provide the shortcomings, the weaknesses, or the limitations of the other side. For instance, if we have a question, in what way did the pre-Socratics enhance the growth of ancient Greek philosophy? Our thesis is on the contributions of the pre-Socratics to the development of ancient Greek philosophy. Therefore, our antithesis will be the weaknesses or limitations of the pre-Socratics to the development of ancient Greek philosophy. The last under the antithesis is analogy. If we have an analogy, then our question will require that we compare or contrast. For example, in the question, is creationism convincing than other theories in accounting for the origin of man? In such a question, we have our thesis, creationism is more convincing than other theories in the explanation or in explaining the origin of man. Thus, our antithesis will be creationism is less convincing than other theories in explaining the origin of man. The last part of our body, the sin thesis. Sin, the prefix sin, is a Greek word meaning together. It is a togetherness of the thesis, bringing the two theses together. It may be a reconciliation or elevation of the conflict between their theses. We should look for a double-sided point whenever we are drafting our thesis. For a recall, one can place the thesis or the title of the thesis at the level of the plan. Take note, it should equally be in one paragraph. Never you draft a synthesis in 2 paragraphs. An example, the first example at the level of reconciliation between 2 opposing views. Let us take this sample question. The question could be, the pre-Socratics were preoccupied with the debates on change and changelessness discussed. In such a situation, our synthesis will be the conflicts between change and changelessness that characterize the philosophy of the pre-Socratic was reconciled by Plato when he explained that both change and changelessness are real. But he differentiated the two by explaining that change is in the world of the senses, while changelessness was the characteristics of the world of forms. Thus, while some phenomena change, others remain changeless. Example 2 of our synthesis could be an elevation of an idea from a lower to a higher position. Sample question. The origin of man is found in the explanations of creationism on one hand and evolutionism on the other hand. Discuss. That is a question. Now, the synthesis could be, even though, take note, at this juncture we're elevating from a higher position to from a lower position to a higher position. So our synthesis could be, even though it has been argued on one hand that the creationists have a solid ground for the origin of man, on the other hand, we concord with the evolutionist perspective. There is equally a Big Bang theory. In our fast emerging contemporary society, it is commendable that we seek refuge with the creative evolutionism of the French philosopher Henri Bergson, who rejected static values in favor of values of motion, change, and evolution. Thus, both creationism and evolutionism are vital in man's dynamism. Conclusion of an AC, the last part of our dissertation. Take note, this is the closure of the general AC. While introducing your conclusion, you can use words like conclusively, consequently, etc. It is a recapitulation of what has been said above. And it is a personal appreciation as a young philosopher. At the end of it, you bring out the significance of the question of philosophical importance to new perspective in the society. Example of a conclusion. Let us take a question. The origin of man is found in the explanation of creationism on one hand and evolutionism on the other hand. Discuss. That is our question, original question. Now, what could be the conclusion of this question in our AC? Conclusively, our intellectual journey this far has been that of elucidating the beginning of man, considered by Aristotle as a rational animal and by René Descartes as a rational animal. By Aristotle as a political animal, and René Descartes as a rational animal. This clarification was guided by two famous theories. On one hand, we reflected with the creationists like St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine, while on the other hand, we echoed with the evolutionists like Charles Darwin. However, we realized that though the Big Bang theory equally explains the origin of man, the creative evolutionism of Henri Bergson, the French philosopher, could be a suitable glue to this philosophical anthropology in our contemporary society. Thus, man is in a perpetual search of his essence, so as to give meaning to his existence in a society captured by techno-science. That is a sample of a conclusion of an AC. Lesson summary, or what we have been saying, we said with our defined method, defined methodology, philosophical methodology, give the distinction between philosophical methodology and philosophical method. We've seen the point we must respect in drafting a dissertation. The first, we said it must have 5 paragraphs, and it is made up of an introduction, body, and a conclusion. The body of an essay, we said, it is made up of 3 parts, triadic in nature, as we said, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. And each part is constructed in just a paragraph, contrary to the previous requirements of 3 theses and 2 or 3 antitheses and 1 synthesis. The third thing we retain today is that there are 5 main steps of a paragraph, which are introducing a point, explaining the point, justifying the point, illustrating the point, and concluding the points. Dear learners, for our take-home exercise, for you to apply all what has been said, you are expected to write an essay on the following question. Can abortion be considered ethically acceptable? For 25 marks. When I say 25 marks, it's just to guide you, for you to know what you are supposed to do, the introduction, body, and the conclusion. For references, you can read Bertrand Russell, The History of Western Philosophy. You can equally read Stumpf's essay in Philosophy, History, and Problem. We have come to the end of today's lesson. The next lesson will be on philosophical methodology in textual analysis. Now, not philosophical methodology in text in dissertation. So next class we'll lay emphasis on philosophical methodology in textual analysis.